Now, when Mendel went through with his pea plants, he chose which plant to pollinate another plant with. So that way he could maximize the efficiency of the breeding. He could test, what would the offspring of a plant with trait A crossed with plant with trait B, what would the resulting offspring, what would their characteristics be, the traits for the characteristics be? For many of his experiments, he used what he referred to, and we still refer to, as true breeding plants. True breeding means that when the plants are pollinated, the resulting offspring will look exactly like the originals. Okay? If a purple flowered plant mated with a purple flower plant, the offspring will be purple flowered. If it was a tall plant crossed with a tall plant, will always give tall plants. True breeding. Now, this breeding, he referred to it as hybridization. Hybridization. The making of a hybrid is literally what that means. The hybrid is his way of saying the blending of plant A to the blending of plant B to give you offspring. Hybridization. The original plants he started with his, experiment, he would refer to those as the P generation. Why would he designate a name for what the plants he's starting, a mating or a hybridization experiment? Well, part of the problem you'll see as a scientist is, words have meanings. Words have specific meanings. And if we don't agree on the words to use and their specific meanings, well, there can be some mistakes made. For instance, words that you would use here in Missouri mean completely something different if you were to head into the deep south, or it'd mean something completely different if you head up to the northeast. They use words up in the northeast you've probably never heard of here in Missouri. So words have meanings, and if we don't agree up front what words we're going to use, what nomenclature we'll use, and the meaning of those words, there will be mistakes made. So, to get around that, he developed his own words. He developed his own nomenclature, which he then presented to everybody when he published all his work and said, here's how we're going to talk about things. The parents, what you start off with, the P generation. P male, P female. Hybridize those together. Their first generation of offspring are referred to as the F1 generation. Filial 1 generation, the first filial generation. We just refer to it as the F1s. You take an F1 and another F1, you hybridize, breed those together. Their resulting offspring are the second filial generation, F2. Take two F2s, mate those together, F3, F4, F5, and so on and so forth. Now, why do we do this? Why do we still use this nomenclature, this way of describing generations that he developed back in the mid-1800s? Because it works. It works so well. Because if I sit there and say, hey, we're looking at the, this data is taken from the third generation. Okay, the third generation. Does that mean the parents, their offspring, and then the offspring there? or the F1s, the F2s, the F3. So by saying the second generation, the third generation, the fifth generation, too much wiggle worm and what the words could mean. So here we are. Now, when you go and you look at what Mendel actually studied, he studied seven different characters. And it turns out that the characters he was studying each had two traits. Flower color, as you see over there, purple or white. Pea color, yellow or green. Pea texture, round or wrinkled. Height, short, tall, pod shape, blah, blah, blah. And he counted thousands and thousands and thousands of plants, keeping track of which plant had which which traits. And then he started studying the numbers, looking for patterns. You notice an example of one of his experiments to the far left over there. The pea generation, the true breeding parents. One plant had purple flowers, another plant had white flowers. He did the whole cut, pollinate with a paintbrush, waited to see what the seeds were, counted the seeds, planted the peas, and then looked at, a few weeks later when those germinated, what were the plants? What did they look like? The F1s, all purples. White flowers disappeared. Then he took two of the F1s, mated those together, hybridized those together, and did the same thing again. Waited until the peas were made, counted the peas, kept track of the colors, blah blah blah. Planted the peas and waited till they germinate to flowers. Counted them up. Purple and white came back. White came back. And he counted numbers though. That's the big thing. He counted numbers. He was looking at trying to see if there was rhyme to reason to the numbers, the patterns. 705 purple flowered versus 224 white flowered in the F2 generation. This is a pattern that he would notice over and over and over again. Because when he went and looked through, as you notice to the far left there, the different characters, the different traits, some traits dominated others. Here dominated, the dominant trait means that it masks, or it's the one that will be presented. Purple, dominant over white. Axial, for the flower position, is dominant over terminal. Yellow peas over green peas, round over wrinkled. And if you look at the numbers, the numbers, 705 to 224, 651 to 207, and on and on and on. In his mind, when he looked at those numbers, he started to see a ratio. 3.15 to 1, 3.14 to 1, 3.01 to 1, 2.96 to 1, 2.95 to 1, and so on. Average those out, basically you get a 3 to 1 ratio. Start off equal numbers, purple flowered plants, white flowered plants. In the P generation, the F1 generation would all be purpled. Take the purple flowered plants of the S1 generation, hybridize them together, boom, white comes back. The recessive comes back, but it's not equal. Not in the same ratio, 50-50, as you had in the parental. It's always going to be in a 3 to 1.